This is a shit show already, isn't it?
Yeah, when you got people driving the wrong way up a one-way street. Yeah.
I love it.
It's Vegas.
It's Vegas, baby. It's Vegas, baby.
Local
Vegas.
Nevada plates. We don't know how to drive here.
That's fine.
Before we start today's show, please visit the sponsors, affiliates, and friends of the Stagecoach.
The Square Reviews, brutally honest product and travel reviews for red-blooded Americans by red-blooded Americans. Visit them at thesquarereviews.com.
TheGunFood.com has an extensive network of partners to connect you with your guns, ammunition, and firearm training. The Gun Food only sells ammo that they trust. Use RSWC as a discount code and save 5.56% on your order at thegunfood.com. PowerTac flashlights have combined premium craftsmanship, American ingenuity, and cutting-edge technology, creating a highly dependable tool that you can trust your life with. Go to powertac.com/RSWC and save 15% on your order. That's powertac.com/RSWC. Sabre Pepper Spray has been making grown men cry since 1975. Find the link in the show description and help get the Stagecoach across America with every Sabre Red purchase you make.
Shotgun with Charlie.
Riding shotgun refers to the practice of sitting next to the driver in a moving vehicle. The term riding shotgun came around after the time of the Stagecoach, when somebody used to sit next to the driver holding a shotgun, in case they ran into bandits. My name is Charlie Cook, and I drive a lot. I like to talk to people while I'm driving, so I interview people in my car while I'm driving. Welcome to Riding Shotgun with Charlie.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we start this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie, I want to thank you all for being here and tuning into the show, whether you're watching on the YouTube or you're listening to the podcast version of the show. If you are watching the show and you're new, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the notification bell, because that's good for all analytics and YouTube and all that kind of crap. And I have been watching some of the statistics on the YouTube. There are more people that are new people that are watching the little shady character walking by. There are a lot of new people that are watching the show. I'm glad you guys are here. Again, please hit the notification and the subscription, so it's good for All Stuff YouTube. And if you enjoy the show, please share it with your friends, because that is how we get the Stagecoach across America. All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we are in Las Vegas at the SHOT Show, and I have with me Jake Wiskerchen from Walk the Talk America. Jake, so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, bro.
So one of the things that I've been doing on my research on you is making sure I can pronounce your name properly.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate that Rob Morris gets it correctly.
Yes. Well, the reason that I get it correctly is because Rob Morris, I remember you were on with Rob one time. I don't know if it was on Polite Society, but you were on with him, and he's like, how do you pronounce your name? And you're like, Wiskerchen. And I'm like, I have to remember that. I can't spell it, but I can pronounce it.
We don't need to spell it here.
This is true. We're not hooked on phonics.
No.
You're with Walk the Talk America.
I am.
You're here with at Vegas, doing what a lot of folks are trying to do, raise some money for your group and your organization, because you guys are doing incredible stuff.
Thank you for saying that. We are, and sometimes it's a labor of love, and if I get choked up a little bit, it's because sometimes you don't really appreciate what you're doing when you're in the middle of it until somebody pulls you aside at a after party and says, your guys' stuff saved my life, and here's why, which seems to happen at every trade show we go to.
Wow.
At least once, if not twice. So
that's great.
It is cool. I'm very proud of the work that we do. Everything that we do is volunteer driven by and large. Mike's the only paid employee, if you will, of the organization. He's the founder, and he's been on here before. Yes,
we'll put a link to his show. Yeah. We also had Mike Sodini on Meet the Pressers, so we're gonna put a link to that as well.
So Mike lives in Las Vegas, and I live in Reno, which is not in Las Vegas. And a lot of people may not know that. We're up in the elbow of the state. If you think geographically, Nevada kind of does this elbow thing. We're next to Tahoe. We're about 40 minutes away from Tahoe.
Yep.
My flight got canceled on Monday, so I ended up driving down from my home in Reno And
this is how we had a vehicle?
Yeah, this is how we had a vehicle. I drove 440 miles in the rain, and it was much better than any air travel I could have.
Yeah, so here's my air travel mess this week. I flew from Hartford to Chicago. We had a 2-hour layover, which is fine. Mm-hmm. And the 2-hour layover turned into a 5.5-hour layover. Well, we get these messages while we're in the air that says, your flight's been changed to 11:30. Your flight's been changed to 12:56. Your flight's been changed to 1:26. Your flight's been changed to 11:30. Your flight's been changed to 11 o'clock. And I'm like, it was supposed to be 11 o'clock the whole time. And then they're like, your flight's been changed to 1:30. And then by the time it was 2:30, we were actually on the plane. And then there were mechanical issues. We had to deplane and get on another plane. Yeah.
Eddie Davenport, which is one of our, he's one of our clinician members of the board at Walk the Talk, got his flight canceled out of Chicago. So something in the whole Midwest section.
Something's going on. It was bad. But I got here. It took you less time to drive than I said at Midway in Chicago.
It took me less time to drive than if I had caught the originally rescheduled flight.
Oh my gosh.
So and now, because I got to drive, my wife, who flew down today, actually got an earlier flight, and so I got to pick her up, and we've been introducing her to everybody that I've known over the last few years of doing this. And
that's very cool.
I'm very proud of that, and it's really cool to see her interconnect, especially with a couple of the spouses.
Nice.
That's neat.
Nice. Yeah, there are a lot of I was talking to Clovertac and Ghost Tactical, and Clovertac's wife came, and she calls herself a SHOT Show widow. so that's what your wife is this week. She's a SHOT Show widow.
That guy's wife.
Exactly.
That guy's wife, Media.
You know him. You know her.
Yeah.
Oh, they're awesome, man. They're awesome.
Armenthea.
Yeah, I have to say Clovertac's wife because I can't pronounce her name. I can pronounce Wiskerchen. I can't pronounce
Armenthea.
Yes.
I'm excited for her to meet Heather because they're both nurses, and I think they'll
cool.
get to talk some nurse shop.
Nice. Yeah, that's good.
Here we are, Las Vegas Boulevard.
Las Vegas Boulevard. Look at this. Half it's under construction. Some of this is from the car race, right?
Yeah, they had a Formula One race down here. I actually watched that on TV, and it took us pretty deep into the evening. But man, it was cool. Yeah. It was neat watching those cars zip around.
That is kind of cool.
Some of it's just reconstruction of old places like the Mirage. Which, I'm a little bummed that the volcano isn't going off, but they're rehabbing, doing things.
That's all right. All right. So First thing I like to ask people, how did you become a gun guy?
So I've owned guns my whole life.
Yep. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Reno. I'm 5th generation Reno, actually, on my mom's side. So 5th generation Nevadan. My kids are 6th. And even though I'm in Reno, I still do claim Vegas. It's not my favorite town, but I appreciate it. And I have lots of good friends here. I have friends who are Las Vegans. So I've owned guns my whole life. Came from a family full of cops. We also hunted. My dad grew up in Ely, which is on the east side of the state. And rural, very, it was a mining town back in the day. And they had the Kennecott Copper Corporation and whatnot. So his dad worked in the mines and whatnot. He came to Reno for school, met my mom. He became a police officer. I have 2 uncles, all 3 of whom have retired now. 3 uncles, all of whom retired from various police departments. And then I have a cousin, Brandon Casanelli, who just retired also. He was very unique because he was a police officer and a marriage and family therapist. And I helped shepherd him into this career. So I'm a marriage and family therapist by trade. Yeah. But grew up with him, was never into the gun culture, didn't know anything about it. We hunted sometimes. The firearm for the duty weapon was a tool for the job. We did go out shooting from time to time as children. I learned basic safety, but it wasn't a thing. And so when I got into this, I met Mike through a podcast that I host called Noggin Notes, and I've had that for several years, and it's mental health only. And I had heard about Walk the Talk America from a buddy who I went to college with, who owns, or his mom owns, but he manages Reno Guns and Range, which is our premier range, indoor range retail store in my town. So Jordan texted me one day, he says, have you heard of these people? And Jordan and I had talked about this guns and mental health thing for a long time. How can we help each other? We didn't know. Anyway, I look up them, as I like to say, which is Walk the Talk America, and I was very impressed. And so I sent an email to them. Turns out it's Mike running a one-man show. And I said, I love having you on my podcast. This is a really cool topic. And so he, of course, said yes, came on, we did the show, and then continued talking for another hour and a half afterward, and we became BFFs and realized we had work to do.
Nice.
What I had not recalled, though, until about a year ago. So that was 2019. That was May of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
About a year ago, we're filming this January 24th. He reminded me that in that show, before we started filming or recording, he says, yeah, you said we could talk all about your organization, but let's not talk about how I'm a concealed carrier because my people in my industry won't get it. No, there might be blowback. And I'd forgotten all about that. And I realized there was a coming out of the closet, if you will, of me as a firearms carrying, owning mental health practitioner.
Sure.
And I was worried that some of my peer colleagues would look askance upon that combination because we just don't talk about guns in my field. Even in grad school, we talk about all the sensitive subjects of family economics, sexual issues, and sexual orientation, suicidal ideation, and all the things that aren't fit for polite conversation at a barbecue. We don't talk about guns.
I like that.
And so I realized in talking to Mike that I had to occupy a space that was not occupied by anybody else. So that begat a series of conversations regarding how can we do trainings for professionals to become more culturally competent with firearms.
Yeah.
And I at the time I was a very, very novice firearms owner. You know, like I said, it was a tool for a job. Maybe you stuck in a safe self-defense if somebody breaks into your home or whatever, but hadn't really thought it through. Now, I did go through the police academy at one point in my life. That ended up not being a career. So I'm quite familiar with that aspect. But it wasn't until we met at GRPC in 2019 that I started to meet some of the other influencers, if you will, and other professionals within the firearms community. And I thought, man, this is a really dynamic, diverse group of people that I need to get to know. So that led to SHOT Show in 2020. And that's when it clicked. I never understood why people needed to swap out their barrels or trick things out or use optics or I didn't get it.
Right.
And then I walked into SHOT and I was like, oh, I get it. It's a whole thing. Like it's international. It's very diverse, very welcoming, very curious people. They're not very, I understand the industry, technology is proprietary, but the training aspect, the community aspect, nothing's proprietary. People like to help others. They like to improve other folks' understanding and ability of what they're doing. And I really appreciate that. And I liken it to the homebrew community. I've been a homebrewer for a really long time. And in the homebrew community, you can understand that maybe if somebody develops a recipe for beer that's really good, they don't want to share it. But that's not all the case.
Right.
It's like, oh yeah, you want to make this? Here, let me tell you how. And these are the ingredients and this is the boil temp and all that stuff. And I found some very cool parallels between homebrewing and firearms. So I was all excited to do some more trainings, and then the world ended in 2020. And we were very fortunate, actually, that happened, because what it did is it pivoted what we were doing of training mental health practitioners from in-person to virtual.
Right.
So we did 2 classes in Reno in 2019 that got 12 to 14 people in attendance at Reno Guns and Range. And in 2020, we partnered with the University of Nevada to put the class online. We did a virtual class. We got 74 people signed up.
Very cool.
And then we did another one. It was so successful. We did 230 people. So we thought I think we're onto something here, right? And then it just rolled into one thing after another. So I'll stop talking because I've rambled for a bit, and I'm sure you have more
not
questions.
at all. So how did you? You said mental health and marriage counseling?
Yeah. So marriage and family therapist is my license.
Gotcha.
That's granted to me by the state. I get the blessed permission from .gov to go advertise, and that assures to the public that I meet a minimum level of competence for what I do. That's all a license means.
It's not encouraging. When you
No,
say,
it's not.
Say it
It's
that
not.
way,
No, we
it's
do have
really not encouraging.
we do have professional ethics that ask us and invite us to become better, and hopefully that would make Earth better. If we're better at our jobs, people heal faster and so forth.
Sure.
But marriage and family therapist is one of many stripes of mental health clinicians. You also have psychologists who are typically doctoral level, although I know some states only require a master's degree.
Yeah.
West Virginia is one of those, and Samantha Mann, who writes for NRA Women, is a psychologist. She's a clinical psychologist in West Virginia. She only has a graduate degree. I say only. It's a master's level degree.
Right.
So psychologist is one. Clinical social worker is another, and that's what Eddie Davenport is. He's one of our Walk the Talk advisory board members. He's in North Carolina. Professional counselor, and they take different names elsewhere. There's mental health counselor, licensed professional counselor, clinical professional counselor, basically all the same thing. They have a different license, but essentially you're talking about a person who does talk therapy.
Yeah.
And then And then we have alcohol and drug counselors, and those can range from bachelor's level to master's level, and typically they center on substance abuse. So you got different stripes of mental health professionals, and that accepts the psychiatrists. And psychiatrists, which usually people go, oh, you're a psychiatrist, Dr. Wiskerchen. I'm like, no, I don't have a doctorate degree. They're MDs. They're actual medical doctors that go through medical school and choose a psychiatry path as opposed to orthopedics or whatever you might pick, general practitioner, primary care. So those are the overview of what a mental health professional would be. I just happen to be one of them, and it's called a marriage and family therapist. Gotcha. And the reason that that's significant to some people is that we, back in the 1970s, we, the marriage and family therapists, decided that taking an individual and treating them systemically to look at their whole family, their job, their upbringing, all that stuff, feeds into who they are as a human being and how they respond to the environment and some of the habits they've created over time. So we like to think of ourselves as systemically oriented therapists. But these days, it's been 50 years. You'd be hard pressed to find somebody who doesn't think systemically. So really, you get a counselor, you get a therapist, whether it's a social worker or a professional counselor or MFT. They're all going to look at you and your world, and not just you as an individual.
How did you pick this field? Like, what did you have a rough bringing up, and this led you towards something like that?
No, that is sometimes the story, though.
Right.
I had a bunch of false start careers because I was a very insecure individual coming out of high school and going into college. So I loved chemistry, started as a chemical engineering major. That lasted all the semester because then I realized that as much as I love chemistry, math is not my thing. So I switched from chemistry or chemical engineering to logistics because somebody said logistics makes a lot of money, and logistics now we know is supply chain management. And that turned out was dropped my mic.
That's okay. I just realized a few minutes ago I didn't put the recorder on.
Oh, you're kidding me.
I did
so I have to start over?
No, I have to start over.
Okay.
It'll be fine. I'm a highly trained professional.
Yeah.
Well, let me know. No, we're good.
When do you want to start now?
Just keep going.
Okay. So, started out in chemical engineering, switched into logistics, found out that was just a different kind of math that I didn't like, but it was in the business school, so I stuck with it.
Yeah.
Took some accounting class, whatnot. Somewhere along the way, I became a student leader on campus, was in student government, fraternity, whatnot, and thought, man, I really like this. I like event planning. I like being around people.
Mm-hmm.
I DJ'd at different parties and whatnot, and was active everywhere. And thought, I want to do something that works with people. What works with people? So I flipped through the course catalog and I found public relations, and I thought, that's cool. We should do that. Turns out it's in the journalism school. It has nothing to do with people, but more to do with writing.
Right.
As it turns out, I'm also a very good writer and I enjoy it. So switched into journalism.
Mm-hmm.
5.5 year senior, I finally graduated with my journalism degree in PR, but it was in the post 9/11 economy, not a lot of jobs around. Ended up false starting various places, and I ran the next 5 years from banking to food service to restaurant management to law enforcement, private security, insurance sales. I mean, like, you name it, I did it. And nagging me in the back of my head was, I need to get a graduate degree. And I didn't know what in, but I went back to my old campus advisor, and she says, you should do educational leadership, and you should be a college student advisor. I thought, yes, absolutely. I love college. I should go back to college and just stay there. So
right.
While I was on this track for this educational leadership grad degree, I took some counseling classes and just really got bit by the bug. Graduated, sniffed around for some colleges to hire me across the U.S., but this is now 2008 when the economy's yet again recessed. And while I was doing my grad work, I rubbed elbows with a guy named Christian Conti, who has become a very good friend and mentor of mine. We met playing softball. He was a professor in the counseling program. And I took a couple classes from him, ended up working for him at an agency in town doing in-home work with children, usually children, adolescents, some adults. And I was like, this is it. I got to do counseling the rest of my life, but it requires yet another graduate degree.
Oh my gosh.
So I re-enrolled in the counseling program and graduated in December of 11, got licensed as a state intern in 12, And for those who don't know, you got to go through 3,000 hours of licensed but supervised practice. So you got all the privileges and rights there too pertaining, but you're overseen by somebody else, very much like a resident doctor. Mm-hmm. So I completed that in a couple of years. Worked in a child and adolescent inpatient psych hospital. Did some more rural work, in-home. Had a little bit of a private practice on contract, and at some point I said, I want to form my own company because I think I can do it better. And I wanted to make agency work desirable. Mm-hmm. In our realm, there are people who you come out of school and your options are very limited. It's like you work for the government, you work for a hospital, you work for a corporate health agency, or you own a private practice. And everybody flees to private practice because they can't. What's wrong with my microphone? No, that's not my microphone. Never mind. Okay.
It's not some kid's toy, is it?
No, I don't think so. Maybe. I don't know. Took the car seats out.
Took the kids out too.
Yeah, the kids are out too. But there's a guy doing a
Oh, nice. This is good.
We could witness disaster on this trip, Charlie.
Perfect. You know what? I'm just going to run him over.
I would not advise that in my vehicle.
Oh,
I am insured, but not for that.
All right.
I don't have homicide insurance out here. Certainly not perpetrated by somebody else driving.
Homicide insurance is what they want you to have in New Jersey.
Yeah. So I opened this agency with a couple of partners, and we called it Zephyr Wellness. And there's a really cool, I'm not going to go into this. I'm going to invite people to watch the YouTube video on why we call it Zephyr Wellness, but it's got significance. And the first partner didn't last a year, and so then there ended up being two of us, and we continued to grow the agency. And then 2021, she sold her part to me, and now I own Zephyr Wellness. And so Zephyr Wellness does outpatient counseling, and we do school-based mental health, and we do rural outreach, and we do telehealth and whatnot. I'm very proud of that and what we've created. And one of the proudest things that I think I've done as a professional is to host graduate students who are seeking their degree hours face-to-face in practice. And what that allows us to do is not only shepherd new people into the industry and grow the profession, but also to avoid turning anybody away for lack of ability to pay or insurance coverage or whatnot. So we have this nice, robust agency in Northern Nevada that does a lot of really cool things. And one of the big things I wanted to do is not only make agency work desirable and create a cool culture where you don't work yourself into the ground. We give lots of time off and all that stuff and make it a family-oriented place, but also to be very loud and present in the public, because our profession has lingered in the shadows for a really long time. And I think that's honestly what's contributed to a lot of the stigma that we face in mental health.
Why do you think that is, Jake?
I think it's because we believe that we have some precious ordained privilege that no one else has, which is talking to you, receiving your information, and keeping it very private. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, lots of professions do that. Attorneys do that. Financial advisors do that. Like, we're not the only ones. Every medical professional does that. But for some reason, we thought we were very special. And what that turned into is, in grad school, they will often say to you quite directly, if you see a patient in public, you do not acknowledge them because that is breaching confidentiality. And it's like, no, it's not. What it's doing is making it weird to go seek help. So I went the other direction, much to the chagrin of some of my professors and mentors and supervisors. They didn't like how loud we were becoming. So we were told specifically, you can't have podcasts. You can't be on social media. If you have a podcast, it could be considered treatment without consent. It's like, didn't you write a book? Like, the person who's telling me this.
Right. So didn't you write a book to try to help people?
Excuse me.
But I guess if you buy the book, then you're getting consent.
I guess, yeah. And if you listen to podcasts, you're also consenting to whatever's going on in your ears.
Right.
So.
You consent to downloading.
Yeah. So it's all just a bunch of nonsense by people who are overly scared. Everybody thinks there's a lawsuit lurking around every corner. It's just not true. So I said, well, we need to get this information out into people's hands. And now that's evolved into doing things like podcasts and YouTube videos and tabling events at elementary schools, handing out literature and saying, please help yourselves, stay out of my agency if you can avoid it. We'll always be there for you if you need professional psychotherapy. Right. But I want to work myself out of a job. I would love to, if I still had 10 years on my lease in the office in Sparks, I would love to turn that into a coffee shop and a brew pub. If it meant that everybody else was healthy and kids weren't, being bullied on the playground. And
I always thought it would be cool if there was a therapist that had a little bar in a little bar and a couple of time,
You can loosen people up, that's for sure.
That's like really, this is when you want things to come out, and a quick 50-minute session with 2-drink limit, right?
Maximum or minimum?
Okay, well,
is the comedy club
right? No, 2 drinks in 50 minutes. It ought to be enough, right?
Yeah, why not? Yeah. I think that may go a little askance with the substance abuse counselors, but you may not want to be encouraging, partaking in the thing they're trying to quit. But yeah,
it's not for everybody.
No, it's not.
We're not making people drink. We're just
cocktails and counseling.
There we go. That's my new podcast.
Cocktails and counseling. If I could shed my licensing board and the ethics that come along with the license and the professional association, maybe we could do that. But
I have a friend of mine. One of my really good friends is she's been doing. I honestly, I have friends that I've grown up with, and I have no idea what they do for a living. Right? Like they're like, oh, I do this. I'm like, I don't really know what that means, but okay, like rock on. So anyway, she does like HR work, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, you need to come up with a podcast. You need to come up with a show or whatever, social media thing, and call it Putting the Human in Human Resource. And she's like, I don't have enough letters behind my name. I can't do this. There's no reason, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you'll be fine. It'll be a podcast. Put out the disclaimer, right?
Yeah, there's certainly a stigma with that profession, too, where they're just, what's your loyalty? Is it to the employer or to the corporation? It's always the corporation, the employee, right? You're supposed to be this intermediary between the employees and the bosses.
Yeah.
It's never that way. But to your friend's credit and some others that I've rubbed elbows with lately, they are now starting to realize that they need my people in there to coach their managers, their subordinates even, and the upper management on how to work with employees as they're going through life. Because I blame Google for this, because Google did the whole bring your full self to work thing. It's like, no, bring your work self to work. But
right.
Nevertheless, it became a thing. You bring your whole self to work, and you're talking about your marriage or the pet that just died or your kid's struggles in school. And some of it's quite, I'm being cheeky about this, but some of it's quite serious. People lose, family members, or they have some travesty befall them or some illness in the family, and it spreads through the workplace, and nobody knows how to deal with it. And then those people are taking it home thinking about Joe on the front line of whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm the boss, and I'm supposed to help Joe, and I don't know how, and here I am plagued with this thing while I'm trying to have dinner with my own family at home. So I've actually recently been invited into several organizations, governmental and non-governmental, to train staff on how to have good boundaries. And that's something that we're supposed to be very good at in my job, where they teach us leave work at work. We're supposed to respect their autonomy. We have these 5 ethical precepts, one of which is autonomy, which is respecting the individual's ability to choose for themselves how they want to execute life. It's not on us. So we may be very proud that we helped somebody through a very tough time, but ultimately we want to return to, you did this, not me. Mm-hmm. And I'm now offloading that to some of these corporate and governmental workers to say, hey, it's not yours to carry. That's theirs to carry. You can be present. You can sit with them. You can guide them even. If they ask, you can offer advice. Don't give non-consensual advice. That's not a good idea. But then let it go. You can
buy the book.
Yeah. and then let it go. And if it gets too hairy, we're here for you. As a professional backstop, make a warm handoff to my agency or somebody else. Really, what we're trying to do is do that with the gun community, because the firearms community is full of industrious, resilient, tough people, right? Who like protection, and they like advocating for freedoms and personal rights and responsibilities. And sometimes that gets a little overextended to think, I don't need to ask for help. And sometimes you do need to ask for help, and sometimes that's psychological help, and that's okay. And one of the stigmas that I'm trying to break is that we need to reframe mental illness into more of a physical illness realm, where if you bust your knee up and you can't get it working for a little while and you don't know what happened, you go see a physical therapist or a doctor. Or, sometimes you need surgery.
Get it worked on.
But the point is, you will recover. And I think our profession has done a very poor job, and there are some grifting opportunists who purposely pad their calendars, and I understand that. Mm-hmm. But we've done a very poor job of setting a goal that says, at some point you will leave treatment. You will be well, and you will no longer come to my office again, because you will have discovered these things. You will have realized self-efficacy. You will have gotten some tools to help navigate life on your own. And quite frankly, humanity over the last 40,000 years or so that we've been Homo sapiens evolved without my profession. It's only been around for 100, 120 years. So somehow humans have been healing each other without me thinking I cornered the market on that. So I'm trying to push that messaging out, which of course, makes people's heads pop too. They're like, oh, you're threatening my business. Is that such a bad thing? I don't know.
Right.
We get rid of addiction and suicide. Like, I don't know.
Don't you want people to be well?
I'd rather drive a forklift at Home Depot if it meant that I didn't have to see couples arguing in the grocery store.
When you do see them arguing in the grocery store, turn the video sideways so you get the camera sideways so you get some good video.
Hamburger, not hot dog.
Right, we got to send it to. Nice, you got to send it to World Star, so that's good. Yeah, that's really interesting. I've seen a therapist for a while, and I have someone that I go talk to on a when you need to, which is good. And it's nice to me. It's nice just to have someone to go to that you don't have to. Worry about things with, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can say, hey, listen, you know what? I'm really bothered by this. I don't like this. This is going well. I'm not happy about this. I'd like to make this better, and not have them hold some sort of judgment.
Confidentiality is a big key. Being able to trust the person that they're not just going to go gossip about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't always get that in our inner circles, because what you do when you present something very challenging to another human being, that human being may not know how to process it and then leave it. They have to go ping it off somebody else.
Right.
Hey, you're not going to believe what Charlie just told me.
Right.
What do you think? And then all of a sudden,
of a friend.
Yeah, I breach your confidentiality. Now Charlie's not going to come talk to me again. So,
right.
So that's a big deal. And I think that's how we got the overly sensitive tilt toward never say anything to anyone, confidentiality stuff. But the other point to that you bring up is the non-judgmentalism.
Yeah.
We all have our worldviews. We all have our filters through which we see life. And that comes from a variety of backgrounds and reasons and teachings and whatnot. So when you give me some piece of information, I'm going to see it through my lens, not necessarily yours. And this is where I get to give a plug to my good friend and mentor, Christian Conti, who I mentioned before, who's turned into our WTTA podcast into a drinking game. So whenever we mention Christian Conti, everybody takes a drink.
Nice.
But he's been that important.
You just said, wait, no, that was so you're not trying to encourage people to drink, but
I mean, it could be Zip Fizz. That's
okay.
Fine. Whatever you're having for.
I guess I assume drinking was alcohol.
There you go with your worldview again.
Right.
But,
that's the game I'd like to play.
So what Christian taught us, Dr. Conti, if you want to look him up, drchristianconti.com. He's got a great book called Walking Through Anger, and it teaches this concept called yield theory. And what yield theory is, and I'm going to throw out a fun psychological term that's like 50-cent word, called a phenomenological perspective. So what's a phenomenon? Everybody thinks it's a big, great thing. Right. Turns out, by definition, it's just a unique thing. And everybody's life is truly unique. Mm-hmm. You're the only one who could live your life. So if I could try to take a phenomenological perspective of your life, meaning let go of what I think I know about you, but know some stuff about you and try to see it through your eyes, and not just walk the metaphorical mile in your shoes, but be you. Your cognitive functioning, your affective, meaning your emotional range, your life experiences, your upbringing, your belief system. What that means is that through that lens, everything you do, everything you say would make complete sense, because you have reasons for it. You may not know the reasons, but there are reasons. And then it alleviates judgment on my part. I go, well, Charlie did this thing that, the rest of society says is sketchy. But from Charlie's perspective, at the time he made this decision with the information he had, it makes sense. So I don't get to judge him for that. Now, he's in my office talking to me about this thing for one reason or another. It means he probably wants some direction and guidance to maybe not do it again. Mm-hmm. Then, consensually, I would say, hey, have you thought of this? Have you thought of this differently? Have you considered maybe the way that your parents influenced you led you to make this decision that you later regret? Oh, well, maybe it did. So now we're unearthing things, and we can go deeper or shallower with conversations like that. Mm-hmm. And that ultimately leads to growth. So what counseling really should be doing is helping people enter what we would call disequilibrium. So you're not just in homeostasis, balanced, everything's going the same all the time, but push you into disequilibrium so that you can grow. And that is the only way you can grow. If you ever talk to anybody who studies development of any kind, whether it's biological or physical or spiritual or emotional, any developmental theorist will tell you the only way to grow is through disequilibrium. So if you stay where you are, not changing, not doing anything, you're not going to grow. Mm. The idea is, if you're sick of your life patterns because they're not getting you what you want out of life, I got to push you into some disequilibrium. And the way I do that is to challenge your beliefs. And that's the tricky part. world is full of people who want to just dispense advice through their own worldview and say, well, if I were you, I'd do it this way. It's like, well, if you were me, you'd be doing it my way because you'd be me. So you have to still trying to get this cough in.
If you were me, you'd be doing it my way.
Yeah, it's
That's
like,
awesome.
yeah, I mean, if I'm Charlie, I'm doing Charlie's way. So what I want to do is politely invite you into seeing it my way. So I'll see it your way and go, all right, and this car is a perfect metaphor for this this yield theory concept. You've got visuals out your window. I'm seeing stuff out my window.
Yeah.
And if you say, man, it's really ugly over here, I go, and I'm looking over here, I'm like, I don't see anything ugly at all. It's my worldview. I have to look through your lens out your window and go, you know what? You're right. It is pretty ugly over there. I have to align with you enough to go,
I can't
do you
believe
trust
I'm
me?
actually looking over
Yeah,
there.
it's not that great.
It's not that great.
There's some construction. And then if I do that enough and I align with you and I do what's called validate, and I go, yeah, that makes sense to me. That's all validation is to say, yeah, that's real for you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't argue with you. I don't try to change your mind. Eventually, you then say, you seeing what I'm seeing? Do you have a different opinion? I go, well, out this window, there's this opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever think about looking over here? Some people, it's really hard for them to go and pivot to look because it's so comfortable looking at what they've always looked at.
Mm.
That's why we stay in jobs longer than we want to, or you know, addictions or pattern, whatever patterns we have. It's just easier. So the hard thing is to let go of that because we're not a certainty anymore, and to entertain new options. But that can be very overwhelming.
Sure.
And then a proper proper guidance with a trustworthy person might say, well, why don't you change lanes? Why don't we take a right up here instead of a left? And then if it's truly working, maybe we change spots and I help you steer your own car for a little while. Or at least I can tell you to take the exit and get off the highway, turn around because you're going the wrong way in life, metaphorically.
Right. But you could be making good time.
You could be making good time going in the wrong direction. Yeah.
Right. We're not making good time.
No, but this is enjoyable, and everybody's getting to see what it looks like driving on Las Vegas Boulevard at, whatever, 4:30 in the afternoon.
Right.
So that's counseling in a nutshell, and it shouldn't be scary and it shouldn't be threatening. And for the firearms community, I think a lot of people don't get an opportunity to talk to people like me because we hide ourselves in the shadows. We don't go to tabling events. We don't have podcasts. We don't reach out. And then you have state level or federal level policies that actively infringe or I guess inhibit care access, at least perceptively, with red flag laws, for example. Very, very poorly understood, and on their face, they're not great anyway. But what is understood is that if I go see a therapist, that therapist may pick up the bat phone to .gov and take my property, and now I'm out of my rights. I don't have my guns.
Yeah.
And that's not technically true in most cases, but there are certain states like Colorado and Washington State and New York that have augmented their red flag laws to include people like me. Most states, it's law enforcement or family member that can red flag you. But there's efforts now to make medical professionals and mental health professionals and school counselors and educators fall into that stripe that says I can red flag you if I think that you're a harm to yourself or others and you have guns. And that makes firearms owners very, very nervous to go seek help. What happens when they don't seek help? Things get worse. When things get worse, we end up with suicides and divorces and drug addiction and so forth. So what Walk the Talk America is trying to do is say, look, there's a group of us out there who are 2A friendly. We may not even be advocates. We may not even be gun owners.
Right.
So most of us are. But we'll say, you can trust us. That is not our first line of defense. When you come in and say, I've got PTSD or I've got anxiety, I was deployed and I saw a bunch of stuff that I didn't want to see, or I had a critical incident on my job, but I'm a gun owner and I want to keep my guns. Our first line is not to say, well, you better give up your guns.
Right.
But we do need to have a conversation that's sober and competent about if you're in a dark space, maybe you should give up your guns to somebody else. It just doesn't need to be compelled by the government. And maybe those people to whom you give your guns up are trusted friends, colleagues, family members. Unfortunately, some of those state and federal level policies are background checks required for transferring firearms, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do we do there? Well, we take a non-serialized workable part out of the gun, and then nobody's a felon. And maybe I don't even have the space in my safe to hold all your firearms, but I got a Ziploc baggie that could hold your bolts. And yes, you could go back down to the store and buy more bolts. But the idea is symbolically anyway, I'm holding your stuff so that you're safe. You can get through your dark time, come out the other end, and then you and I, agree that you're good now and moving forward.
Yeah.
So there's lots of ways we can do that. Walk Talk has its 2A friendly provider directory, and that's great. But what we really want to do is get upstream from the suicidal ideation at all and start putting information into people's hands so they just stay healthy. And one of those ways is through the YouTube videos and the podcast. And I have a whole series on emotional functioning. If you know how your brain works in a responsive environment, that puts you light years ahead of the average person. Just learn about who you are, learn how you tick. You don't even have to come into the office for that. It's a continual conversation. This is why we do things like this, so we get the information out and people can digest it as they see fit. And then if they think they need professional psychotherapy, they can go to a trusted therapist who's not going to be politically adversarial or activist and pushing their own beliefs,
right?
Which is a problem in our profession. I think we've become the epicenter of some of this, what I call postmodern deconstructionism, where nothing is real, everything is a construct of a construct, and we're all supposed to tear it down. And what are you building this place? Nah, just tear it down. Like, well, now you're unmoored, you're unanchored, you don't know where you stand. So if you don't know where you stand, you don't have any direction, and all that stuff I just talked about leaving behind what you think you know to embrace something new can't exist because you don't know where you stand. So I think it's really problematic. Our profession needs to start growing up a little bit and realize we need to not be activists.
Yeah.
And simultaneously, the gun owners need to realize that it's okay to seek help. In fact, one of the most responsible things you can do is know yourself very well.
Sure.
To the point that you can seek assistance when necessary.
Absolutely.
I will say too that some states recently, California, Maryland, New York, Hawaii, Washington, they've required CCW instructors to incorporate an hour of mental health training into their course curriculum. And of course, the poor instructor's like, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, how?
Right.
So in steps Walk the Talk America with its clinical base and says, oh, hey, we just knocked out literally last week an hour's worth of chapters on mental health and resources that you can just plop into your curriculum, press play, and it's me and Rob Pincus and Kevin Dixon and Mike Sodini talking about how you can stay ahead of the curve and not get bad at life. And I think that's really important for CCW holders, because if you're carrying in public, what you definitely want to know is yourself, your own motivations, your own emotions, de-escalation tactics, how to avoid confrontation.
Yeah.
Because that ultimately keeps people safe and it saves lives, including your own.
Sure. Very cool. All right, we are almost where we need to be.
All right.
I think we actually passed the hotel up, and I don't know how to pull into your hotel.
You got to flip around actually and go back down Flamingo. We had an opportunity there where the bus was.
We did, but I'm like, how far can we go?
You could probably.
No, we're gonna bang a U-turn
here. Yeah.
This is what we're gonna do. How can people find Walk the Talk? How can they find your Zephyr?
Yeah. All right. Zephyr Wellness, ZEPHYR wellness.org. I've got a lot of content that I produce. Zephyr Wellness has a YouTube channel. It's got one guy on it. It's me. We got a YouTube channel, and I'm putting stuff out irregularly, but it's just stuff to learn. Right? And we have articles and whatnot, and you can find us. And if you're in Nevada, we're all licensed in Nevada and Utah. That's a great way to do it. Walk the Talk America, WTTA.org. Our podcast called Guns and Mental Health, which is the shirt I'm wearing. Listen to us have conversations like this one with people who have come through tough times, have great strife, and have overcome it. There's really cool stories of triumph, but also now that we have a full 4-person clinical crew, what we're doing with the podcast is we're taking some episodes and we teach on a topic. Like we just recorded the 5 stages of grief, for example, or cognitive behavioral therapy. And we teach on that, and then we ask each other questions, and we just teach to the listening audience. Like, oh, that's cool. That's something I didn't know. And hopefully you grow as an individual through listening to this stuff. Like you might listen to Jordan Peterson and be like, oh, that's really interesting. I'm going to apply that to my life. Or your pastor or anybody else who issues a teaching.
I have a hard time listening to Jordan Peterson because I don't like his...
he sounds like Kermit the Frog?
I don't like his voice and his accent.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's a problem.
He makes fun of himself saying I sound like Kermit the Frog. So I figure I can do it too. Jordan and I, we're buddies. Not really. But that'd be cool if we were.
Right.
he became an unwitting mentor to me in my professional life. When I discovered him on the Joe Rogan podcast, I thought this guy is really, really bright. I know he launched into fame for standing against oppressive speech laws in Canada and whatnot, but really as a clinician, he is so well read and he is so bright. I've learned a lot about how to treat people. He doesn't know that, but I'm sure he has an idea that he's influenced.
We'll tag him and get him on.
I will do my best. So WTTA.org, zephyrwellness.org. I mentioned Christian Conti. He's got a phenomenal YouTube channel.
Okay.
I recommend everybody checking out. Walking Through Anger is his book. It's on Amazon. It's about $18. And then another book I'd like to plug is for Holly Schneider of Delta Defense and USCCA, one of our partners. She is a licensed clinical social worker. She's one of the in-house staff therapists at Delta Defense. So what Tim Schmidt did is he hired 2 therapists to treat their whole staff of 600. And he's made it really cool, actually cool, to go into counseling on duty, at work, on the clock, because he wants a healthy workforce, right? So Tawny is a board member, Tawny Schmidt's a board member of WTTA, and Tim and Tawny have done a great job as far as pushing the culture of mental well-being in the workplace. And we interviewed Andrew Nett, who is one of their therapists, and Holly, but Holly Schneider's book is called Carry Your Own Backpack. And it's basically what I talk about with like good boundary keeping and like what's yours to carry and what's somebody else's to carry, knowing how to navigate that so you yourself don't become overburdened by somebody else's struggles. It's not yours to carry, just let them carry it. And really, it's the honorable thing to do anyway. We want to let people solve their own problems.
Definitely. What I like about the website, it has the free and anonymous mental health screening test.
Yeah, I didn't even mention that. Yeah, so free and anonymous mental health screening is a wristband that I'm wearing, and some of the literature that if you're a distributor, a manufacturer of either firearms or parts or accessories, this something looking like this goes into boxes that get sent out. This one says mental health, it's okay to talk about. As firearms owners, we often have a rough time admitting we need it. It says take a free and anonymous mental health screening today. This particular flyer sits on the counters at retail stores and ranges. And on the back side, it's got a little white space. So if you have a clinician in your community, like Zephyr Wellness, you just stamp your own logo on there. It just sits passively as you're checking out your purchase or whatever. And you go, oh, okay, pick that up. And it inherently implies this is a safe place to go if you're a gun owner. We're not going to judge you. You can come to Zephyr and talk about your stuff, and you're not going to lose your rights. So we partnered with manufacturers to put our stuff in their products, but also like Arms Corps stamps it right on their box. It just says take a free and anonymous mental health screening today, WTTA.org/love, and all their ammo packaging now has it right on the box, which is neat cool. Because it's a passive, non-intrusive, non-threatening way to check in on yourself. But for those people who do it, it can serve as a third party, like a plausible deniability for third party liability when and if something unfortunate happens with one of their products, they don't get sued. And if they do get sued, they say, like the alcohol industry that says, we told them to drink responsibly. Like, hey, we invited you to check yourself out. Like, it's not us, it's not the gun.
Right.
And not only is it not the gun, we actually made a forward step, an affirmative step toward helping people by inviting them to stay mentally well. Don't blame us. So that can go a long way in a lot of directions, and we've got some really good partners. Ruger, Bursa's a big contributor.
Nice.
And while we're still driving, I might as well just say 2 other things. We have 2 partner organizations. Kids Safe. What else is new? Kids Safe, which is Derek LeBlanc's organization up in Oregon. He teaches children firearms.
This is our
responsible firearms training. Yep. Bingo. And Kids to Kings, Devin Perkins in Colorado. He's going into schools and teaching in the inner cities about firearm safety. Here, what the left lane.
Okay.
And those 2 guys are doing really good stuff, and I really love what Derek is trying to do with a multi-state approach. Devin is reaching a demographic within the inner city, mostly black kids, because Devin's a black man, and he grew up in a pretty rough situation, and he's trying to bring those stories forward and save lives by teaching kids how to be responsible and avoid gang activity and that kind of thing. So we're very, very proud that the Venn diagram of our missions overlaps. It's saving lives, right? And we can do it without rights restriction. Education over restriction is what we favor.
Gotcha. That's awesome. All right, we plugged everything?
I think so.
I hope so. We're going to put links to everything. Jake, thank you so much for being on the show.
Charlie.
Thank you for letting me use your car, because this is how I know that people trust me. It's not only that they get in the car, but they let me drive their cars.
And thank you for not running over motorcyclists doing wheelies.
He appreciated that as well.
I'm sure he did, even though he wasn't aware
He
that it
didn't
was
know.
a possibility.
I'm such a giver.
You are.
All right, listen, thank you guys for tuning into the show. We're going to put links below to everything that, to Walk the Talk America, to Zephyr Wellness. We can put a link to
Christian Conti.
Christian Conti. We'll put a link to him as well, and to his book. If you are not a member of the Second Amendment Foundation, you can join them at saf.org, which there's going to be a link in the show description below.
Life member.
Nice, me too. Boom. And you can also check out all of your favorite pro-freedom podcasts at sdrn.us. That's the Self-Defense Radio Network. And we will see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.